y'all. Welcome to Book World: The Great Escape. I'm author CJ Peterson. My co-host over here is author Michael Scott Clifton. Happy Valentine's Day. We're going to be talking about giving love to authors, on how to give a critique and a review today. Before we start, how was your week, Mike?
Well, we were talking earlier, a cold and wet one. But today, as we were also discussing here, since we live in Texas and now you live in Oklahoma,
Mhm.
proof that the weather could change on a dime in two different states at the same time, from cold to wet to dry to warm again. So, yeah. So, anyway, and had a pretty good week and looking forward to the rest of February and hopefully more or less insane weather, and knock on wood. But don't really have any book events
Mhm.
for the rest of February. Uh, so it's calm down a little bit, pick up again a little bit in March. And as we get closer to summer, we do more book events. So how about you, CJ?
Good. Before I start, Julie Brock says hi. Hi, Julie. Um, Let's see. I just been dealing with the weather. I've been under the weather. We had basically rain all day Sunday, and then I was explaining to you, it turned to snow. So then it was like slush, and then it had like 4 inches of snow on top of it by Monday morning. And then it all melted on Monday morning. So our backyard is like a swimming pool right now. Um, but
Yeah.
other than that, I'm dealing with like a sinus infection and ear infection and just, overall having fun. Um, College is going good. Book events, not yet. Comic Conroe, I believe, is the next on our list for Comic Cons down in Conroe, Texas. That's March 8th, 9th, and 10th, I believe, somewhere in that section. So last week we talked about how to receive a critique and a review, which, can be kind of harsh. Today we're going to be talking about how to give a critique or review. In other words, you're showing love to the author. So, how do you do that? Because us authors, we're some of us are a little bit self conscious. So, when we get those and they're good ones, it helps us to feel good about what we're doing and it kind of propels us to go to the next one because that's who we're writing for. But sometimes they can be a little cruel. And so, you have to look at it kind of and analyze it and go, is it constructive or is it destructive?
Right. Well, we talked about last week. If you're going to be a writer, if you're an author, you do have to develop a thick skin because no matter how well you write, no matter uh, the quality of the book or writing that you're producing, you're always going to have naysayers and those that don't like what you're writing. And some of them just do it, as we talk about trolls and stuff like that. That's just what they're going to do. Uh, the same on the flip side of that is we're talking about in today's podcast about uh, how to give a critique or review.
Mhm.
We need to keep in mind the same thing we talked about last week. If you there's sometimes, although I don't think it's nearly as hard to do, but sometimes there is a fine line between giving an honest review, an
Mhm.
honest critique, and going over the line and being a little too cruel or too black and white about another person's work. And
Or analytical altogether,
right.
because some grammar is subjective. There is some room for creative license in there. If every book was grammatically correct, it wouldn't sound right.
And we've both been writing long enough. And if there's people that watch the podcast that hopefully fellow authors have probably most have been writing long enough, we've been on the receiving end of not so great reviews as well as glowing reviews and critiques. And then at the same time, we may have given not so glowing reviews for someone's work or critiqued someone's work. And again, I know I can speak for myself. I've been on both ends of that spectrum, and I at one time got a review, and this has been now I don't know 6, 7, 8 years ago. Got a scathing review, and it was at a writers conference, and we were supposed to uh, one of the breakout sessions where you went to 3 or 4 or 5, 6 people who are going to critique your work. And what you did is you just read aloud your first chapter.
Mm.
So, and you only got, you know, I think the allotted amount of time was like 15 or 20 minutes. It wasn't a lot of time.
Mhm.
And at the end of that, all I heard was all the things that were wrong and that were bad with what I had written. And two things from that. Number one, never got a single comment about what I did right,
Mhm.
only what I did wrong, only the mistakes. And secondly, no suggestions on how to correct the so called problems. It was all negative, it all went in one direction.
Mhm.
And, and you can, so I didn't write uh, one more word. I walked out of that critique session, and when I left that writers conference, I never wrote another word for 2 or 3 years. I
Aw.
didn't. And and the only reason I started writing again was I happened to see a couple of writers that I knew that were part of the writers organization I belonged to at a book event. Asked me if I was writing. Told them no. Told them why, and they encouraged me to start writing again. And I picked it up from that. So I do think, and I have very strong feelings on this, that if you are giving a critique or review, if you can't do it in a constructive fashion, then
Mhm.
don't do it at all,
Mhm.
because you could be destroying somebody's self-confidence and any future they might have in writing.
Yeah, I mean, we have thick skins, but that's developed over time. But even still now, we're still like putting, our precious little baby out there. Please don't squish my heart.
Yeah,
That is the thing. This last summer when I went and spoke at a writers' conference up in Pennsylvania, one of the things we could do was to give critiques or reviews of people's work. So thankfully, though, it was just like a one-on-one thing, which is what I prefer. And so I was able to go through it and I was able to make corrections. I was able to find some things, some bad habits, and that sort of thing. And I like to do what I call a compliment sandwich. So you give them a compliment, tell them what they're doing well. And then the next one is, okay, but here's some things we need to take a look at. This is a habit. I have a habit. This is my habit, which is usually
right,
that, which we've
right,
talked about before, and this is how I combat it. So this is your habit. This will help you um, to see it more often because sometimes, you know, if we're writing and sometimes our editor is used to the way we write, they almost kind of mentally skip over it after a while if they've been working with you for a while. And so when you can get some fresh eyes on it, it's usually much better. And so after the complaint, so you have the compliment and the complaint, you give them another compliment and say, "But you know what? This was really good. This was awesome. I loved how you did this." And so it's kind of not really softening the blow, but it's giving them constructive and not destructive. So this is great. This needs a little bit of work, but this is awesome. Keep
right.
going.
So essentially, what you're saying, and I 100% agree, is that when one is giving a review or a critique, it has three main elements. One, naturally, is okay, here are some things that you might need to do better. Okay.
Mhm,
Because yeah, without an honest review or an honest critique, you're wasting your time and you're wasting whoever's time it is
mhm,
that you're doing the critique for. Two, you give encouragement and you also go over the things that they did well.
mhm,
So the negative has to be paired with the positive. One without the other is useless. It's just
mhm,
useless. And and the third is suggestions on how to improve. If you're a mechanic and you've got an apprentice working with you and they don't say change the oil right, and you tell them, oh, you didn't do that right, and then you don't tell them what they need to do to correct that, how to correctly change the oil in the engine,
mhm,
then it's a useless and mean spirited critique. So
mhm,
you have to define the problems that they're having. That's essential. Yes, if they're not doing something well, don't lie. Don't don't tell someone something's good if it's not. And two,
Mhm,
encourage them on the good things. And three, give suggestions on how to improve those things which you have identified as a problem.
mhm. Now, most times I will not put up a review if it's under a 3 star. I'm a little bit harder on how I do grade stuff because of what I do. Um, but if it's under a 3 star, I would rather contact the author directly and say, "Look, I don't want to put this up, but this is what I'm finding, and you may need to work on this for the next book. I'm not going to put this review up, but I think you should still know, you know, some idea of what I'm
Mm-hmm.
thinking and why
Sure.
I'm not doing it. That way it can help you for the next book." And there have been some that have been really helpful to me. For example, I think I explained it last week that there was one that said, like the first few books, they're like, everybody you talk to doesn't get saved because I'm a Christian fiction author. And I'm like, you know what? You're actually right. And so in the next book, I took that to heart. And the person was told about Christ, but he didn't accept Christ before he died. Now, that to me is a lot more realistic than someone who every single person they talk to does. And so sometimes we can't see that stuff because we're too close to our work.
No, that's true. That's a good point.
Mhm,
It's I read the whole. If we circle back to what is the what's the purpose of receiving a critique or review? What is the purpose, main reason for giving a critique or review? They're really essentially the same. You're receiving, you want a review, or you want a critique, or you want to give a critique or review because as writers and as authors, we want to get better,
mhm,
and we want our fellow writers and authors to get better. And what better way to do that than to identify the strengths and the weaknesses and make the strengths stronger and make the weaknesses less prevalent? And
mhm.
there is really, I mean, let's face it, if you're reading your own work and you're getting your wife or your mother to read your own work, are they going to really give you an honest critique or review? I mean,
And it depends on who your mom my mom
yeah,
would've,
yeah.
but she was a redheaded Texan and a little spicy, so I know that she would have told me, she's like, no,
And that's
try that
true. And
again."
it's
It just
true.
depends on who they are. So if you can
Right.
surround yourself with those honest people as an author,
Mhm.
and they're your beta readers or they're the ones that, you read the book to first, and they're willing to tell you, "Hey, you suck at this part, try this." Or "You lagged right here. I don't know what happened here. Were you tired when you were writing? What was it?" So if you can find those people, 9 out of 10 of the errors that are in your book will be taken care of before it even hits it.
Um,
So when those reviewers do get a chance to read it, there may still be some things in there, but you have to be able to accept it and understand it. Now, having said that, there is a little bit of creative license. We wrote the book. It was a book from our heart. I don't always listen to everything my editor says. I take a lot of it to heart and I kind of mull it over. And if it's something I don't agree with, I might do like half. Like one of them, she said, "You need to get rid of this entire chapter." Well, I don't think so because it sets up a lot of it, but I can get rid of this portion of it. So I kind of get rid of half of that chapter. But I wouldn't have even thought about it had she not said, "Hey,
right.
you're taking up too much of this and you need to pull it out." But my editor is one of those who when she's editing, it's like she's looking over my shoulder and she's told me before she's actually put in there, "I don't know why you do this." So, when you can surround yourself with those different people, the reviews themselves when they come across because your reviewers will tell you, will be a lot less critical unless someone's just having a bad day or wants to troll.
And the same is true with beta readers. I mean, there's like a lot of different ways that you can generate reviews or critiques. I know a number of authors who have another author, and they critique each other's work.
Mhm.
And but they are comfortable with that, which means they're also comfortable in giving not so negative criticism in the sense, hey, you need to change this, as opposed to a complete stranger. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of different ways, and two, you have to be smart about it if you as an author are wanting to get some sort of honest critique or review, or to give an honest critique or review for someone else. If it's in a genre that either you are not familiar with, or you're not comfortable with, or let's just face it, you just don't like, would
Mhm.
you would you want someone to do a review of uh, a fantasy book who writes historical fiction, or bodice buster romances or something like that?
Yeah. You gotta
It's
consider the source.
right. uh, you have to be smart about it. And I think, and although we haven't really talked about beta readers, um,
Yeah, we did. Actually, Jana Morrow was on about it.
well,
It's been a while though.
right. Beta readers are, do give critiques and reviews.
Mhm.
But with beta readers, and correct me if I'm wrong, CJ, I think they're less looking for grammatical errors, for example, run on sentences, POV violations. They're more looking at, does the content
Mhm.
flow in the genre in which the book is written? And do you have any inconsistencies in the story or plot line? The
They
larger,
can
in other
yeah,
words.
they do that, but if there are glaring errors, they'll tell the author. But for the
Right.
most part, they're the content, not the copy.
Right. That's right. So,
Now, there is a five-star system we haven't talked about yet.
okay.
The 5 stars are the ones and that's, part of that picture that's the graphic that's for this particular podcast. It's a 5 star. Now, to me, 5 stars means, "Yay, you did awesome." There may be a few grammatical errors, but other than that, you did spectacular. Like, "Hey, I have not I couldn't put it down." Like your when the Conquest of the Veil series. That's one I couldn't put down. So to me, those are 5 stars. When you're heading down to 4 stars, it's like, there's a couple of things that kinda stuck out a little bit. I mean, it was pretty good, but really good, but there were a few things that kind of just didn't quite click with me. And then to me, 3 star is, "Ooh, I could put this down and walk away," but, it was basis was good, but, something really didn't click.
Right.
Anything below that to me is, "Dude, we need to talk because this probably shouldn't be out. You should probably pull it down and try again." So, I don't know. That's kind of how I run mine. I don't know how you run your 5 stars.
Well, I'd say it's quite similar. Um,
Mhm,
I've, I mean, I've lost count of how many reviews I've done down through the years, for indie authors. I've done them for mainstream authors. For you know, I read across just across the genres. I like all sorts of books, but a 5 star, in my opinion, needs to be one that is a legit 5 star rating,
mhm,
and not one that is in the general neighborhood of it.
mhm,
Uh, I think it needs to be a 5 star. A 5 star needs to be everything is rock solid. A 4 star certainly is not bad. A four
mhm,
star is a great review. Okay, it's just means that it's not perfect.
mhm,
A 3 star in the way I would approach the rating, 3 star is good. It's just not great.
mhm,
It's good. And again, and as you said, anything below 3 has some issues, either in the storyline, the characters, grammar, whatever. And when giving a critique or review, and that's something that I think we both agree on, don't throw out 4 and 5 star reviews
mhm.
just like you would candy to a
Yeah.
crowd. They must, if you're going to be a legitimate person that reviews or critiques someone's work, then the review needs to reflect that. Can't just be something you just think they want to hear. Or
Mhm.
so if it's 4 star, it's 4 star. It's not five.
Mhm.
Okay. And if it's
5
five, it's
stars, they hit it out of the park, and I can't put it
exactly
down.
right. It's over the fence.
Mhm. Now, one thing to consider when you are actually creating the review itself, please, for the love of everything within you, do not put the absolute twists in your review.
Oh yeah, yeah.
There have been times where
Spoiler,
I'm just like, "Dude, you needed to not put that
spoiler
part in
alert.
there."
Yeah, spoiler alert. Yeah,
Yeah, and make sure if you're going to put spoiler alert at the top so
yeah,
people don't do it. But honestly, don't do it. You can word things kind of vaguely until, something happened that was a complete twist in the story and it was great. You can word it different ways without saying, "Well, this happened." And everything suddenly, made a quick turn and it was incredible.
yeah,
Don't put in there what's in there. I'm not even sure I would do a spoiler alert because to me that's still spoiling because somebody's going to read it.
yeah. Actually, though, I've forgotten about that, CJ. But that's a great point because if you're if you're giving a review where you give away the store and you tell the
Mhm.
reader or whoever reads or looks at that review the entire storyline of the book, then you're going to have one mad author,
Mhm.
uh,
Well,
regardless of
mad readers too.
yeah. So no point reading this book now. I already know the ending.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's of course we think about that as common sense, but as the old saying goes, common sense may not be so common.
It's
So
not a flower in everyone's garden, as
no,
I
it's
say.
not. No, it's not.
Another thing to consider is you can be so vague that the author might wonder, did you actually read the book? My other thing is do
Yes.
not put a review on it until you have read the book. I know Amazon tries to get you to, "Oh, what would you rate this book?" I've had somebody rate me a 1 before who literally in the review said they didn't read the book. So I'm thinking, "Why did Amazon put that up there?"
That's funny, but unfortunately true.
I mean, why? First of all, why are you gonna rate something you haven't even read, and why would you tank it for something you haven't read, and why is Amazon letting that go up, but they'll take out a genuine review from somebody else, which to
Yeah,
me makes no sense.
it's
But if
maddening.
you haven't read it, or even if you haven't just general with a product, if you have not used the product or tried the product, don't review it until you have. Don't review the book until you've finished it cover to cover. I mean, it might take you a while, but you can go in there later and do it.
That's what
And when
trolls.
exactly. And when you're actually writing the review, be vague. Kind of vague, but not. Give like a short kind of what stood out to you in the book sort of deal. Not necessarily a summary of the book. You don't need to necessarily summarize it, but just what stood out to you. What was good? If there's something like the gentleman who said not everybody gets saved that's talked to. If there's something that stands out that needs to be said, go for it. You know,
Oh,
But just kinda put it in there, however you're gonna put it in there, but don't give away, like, the major plot twists. Don't give away the ending, "Oh, the butler did it." "Really?
I
Oh, it
mean,
was the field
yeah,
hand that did it."
right.
Don't be doing that stuff, that's not cool.
There's, I think, what we've talked about, a lot of it is just common sense, and I hate to keep saying that over and over again, but it is. Um, give an honest review. Don't make something up.
Mhm,
Give a review on a book that you've actually read, not that you just read pieces of.
mhm.
Don't give
Or you heard somebody tell
right,
you about this book.
right. Keep in mind that if you look at it from the standpoint, if you're on the receiving end of the critique or review that you yourself are giving, what would you find? What would you take
What would
from
be
that
most
as value?
helpful? Yeah,
What would be valuable to you? What would you take from that as something you could use to do a better job?
mhm,
Which is obviously more than just blunt criticism. Uh,
mhm.
that's
Or
that's
what
the
would
worst.
you want to read as the author?
Right,
Or what would you want to read as somebody who's thinking about getting this book for either
right.
herself or himself or a family member? What is it that you'd want to know?
I think writers and authors should intuitively know these things. So, the
See?
general public at large, they read reviews
Mhm,
because they want to know if they like this book or not, whether this book interests them or not. As authors, we take reviews as sort of guideposts on how well we're doing the
mhm,
job in writing these books. And hopefully, if there are some comments that maybe we need to improve in this or that area, we can take those, and the next book written is better than the one before that. So, so again, because this podcast is, it's not all, it's, I think it's an interesting podcast that anybody could listen to, but since it's focused more on, say, authors and writers,
mhm,
you know, um, we do need to take reviews and critiques, both giving and receiving, as a serious matter.
mhm,
And because we're helping other people when we give an honest review, and we are being helped ourselves when we're given an honest review.
mhm. Definitely. And when you're doing it, just one thing to consider is the compliment sandwich.
Yes.
Honestly, tell them what they did good. Tell them what they need to fix. Tell them how to fix what they need to fix. And then end it with another, hey, this part was really good too. I like this. It's not rocket science,
It's not.
but you would think it would be. In this world that we live in with social media, everyone sometimes are a little bit brutally honest with their keyboards. Is it something that you would tell the author verbally? And maybe kind of think of it that way. If I were to sit across from the author at a table for coffee, what would I tell them about this book? Or what would I tell my friend about this book? And maybe kind of go with that thought. You wouldn't tell your friend the major plot twist. You wouldn't tell your friend, the spoilers. Don't put it in the review.
And you wouldn't tell them your book is no damn good.
Mhm,
You would, I mean, again, you would think that would be intuitive, but unfortunately, as I can attest to, that's not always been the case for people who give reviews, and
mhm,
the unfortunate that sometimes receive those kind of reviews. So, you know, I think I think that reviews and critiques are extremely important. And
mhm,
if you do it, if you are critiquing or reviewing work of others, it's incumbent upon you to do the best job possible, but not in a destructive way. Just summing
mhm.
up what we've talked about. If you are receiving
Constructive versus
right,
destructive.
and
Mhm,
if you're receiving a critique or review, then you're wanting affirmation that perhaps you're doing a great job. And if not, where are areas I can improve to get even
mhm,
better?
mhm.
And again, it's not rocket science.
And like I said, your critique or review may come on a day where an author is ready to give up. And you might actually change that author's mind and go, okay, well, apparently I am doing something decent. So I'll keep writing for this particular person. So your reviews mean more to an author than you can think. Make sure to show some love to them. Let's see if I can get it to do it. Yep, for Valentine's Day.
Oh,
There
there
you
you
go, the
go.
heart. Show them some love. They may need it that day. It might just be a discouraging day, or they've got writer's block, and it might help them and inspire them. You can actually inspire your favorite author.
We all need encouragement
Hmm.
in all aspects of life, including authors.
Hmm, definitely. Well, next week we're going to have a special guest. We're going to have David Baylog of Owl Talon Press. And he's also a fantasy author. So we're going to kind of touch on both aspects of who he is and what he does. So super excited. We're gonna talk about pantsing with him because he is a pantser to the
Oh,
nth degree,
good for him.
and he does something worse than what I do. So,
Wow.
yeah, you gotta listen to hear what he does when he does his pantsing. It's definitely unique. Give me a headache, but as it is, each author is very unique in how they handle stuff and how they do stuff, and no one does the same thing the same way. So, like I said, get out there, show your author some love today on Valentine's Day. Make sure to tell your significant other or your parent or your child just how much they are loved. It's not just today, but every day. We'll see you guys next week. Bye.
Bye.